My name is Dicky Abraham. I am the Principal Director at Sperling Legal. We're a specialist commercial disputes firm dealing with all manner of commercial disputes, ranging from simple things like debt recovery to more complex things like insolvency and restructuring, regulatory proceedings, employment disputes, estate disputes, and also the bread and butter stuff like contractual disputes. My background has always been in commercial litigation, so I did a few rotations in my grad year and settled in commercial litigation and haven't looked back. I am an accredited specialist in commercial litigation in Victoria, and I started my practice this year. I had two bugbears that I always knew I wanted to get rid of when I started my own practice, and that was file notes and that was time narratives. Both are part and parcel of legal practice. You have to do it. File notes are powerful pieces of evidence. Contemporaneous notes are required in every lawyer's arsenal. And the same goes for time narratives as well. You have to put the narrative down so client gets value and client sees what the work is. In saying that, at traditional firms, you try and minimize the time you use to put down the narrative because that in itself isn't billable. If there's a 2-minute conversation, you don't want to spend 2 minutes or 4 minutes putting down the time narrative. So I've got a AI note taker, which attaches to all my conferences, whether that's Zoom, whether that's Teams. And I use the same note taker when I meet someone in person. So I'm able to generate a detailed summary of every conversation, much better than a file note that I could prepare, and send it to the client immediately. With time narratives as well, I've got an AI time tracker that tracks all the work that I do on my computer. Because it's an AI time tracker, it has context, so it can put two things together. So if I'm drafting an email and I go to Ostley and I look up legislation and I refer to that legislation in the email, it puts 2 and 2 together. So it can put that down and it expands on that in the narrative. I take about 20 minutes at the end of the day and go through settled narratives. And there are some minor amendments I'll make, but otherwise, the majority of it is quite accurate. I wasn't skeptical about AI legal assistant. What I was skeptical about was whether the functionality that I wanted was available at that price point that you guys offer. So I looked at Harvey, I looked at various other AI tools, and for a startup like mine, it was not affordable. That was the short answer. I had to sign up for a year or two, and it was simply not within my wheelhouse to do it at that point in time. I didn't want to. When I found AI legal assistant, I wasn't skeptical about its capabilities. What I was skeptical about is whether the full functionality will be there for me at the price point that I wanted. And, I'm happy to say it was. I was starting my practice from scratch. So, and I didn't have a client base. So I was starting from scratch. So I'm sort of in that first month, I could get 10 phone calls or none. So you never know. So committing to a year with Harvey is simply not commercially savvy. Used it for was cost proposal. So I tested it out. And part of the reason I did that is because the practice is based on my fees. I provide fixed fees, essentially, or staged cap fees. So I break it down, litigation, into various different stages, and I provide a stage cap for each. Now, if you're familiar with the legal industry, you will know that you're not allowed to charge the time you take to scope out a cost agreement. It's not allowed. So a lot of traditional firms struggle with that aspect because sometimes commercial litigation matters can run 3 or 4 years. So often traditional firms spend probably about half an hour, if that, maybe, if you're an employee, trying to do a cost agreement for a litigation matter that might run 2 or 3 years. And often it's vague and often it's not as detailed as it should be. And that means you're just estimating and you're always amending the cost agreement and you're not getting any value. When I designed Sperling Legal, I wanted to provide stage cap fees. So I wanted to be in a position where I could provide detailed cost agreements, cost proposals that break it down into various different stages. So let's say pre-litigation, this is what it involves, issuing proceedings and pleadings and taking it all the way up to discovery, and then the discovery process, mediation, then after mediation, you've got trial prep, and in between there might be interlocutory applications that you've got to anticipate. I wanted a system where that could assist me with drafting a proposal, which if I was to do it at a traditional firm might take me probably 2 hours to do it in detail if I had all the facts and instructions. Whereas with AI Legal Assistant, again, what I do is I get the instructions from the transcript because it's attached. I feed it into Legal AI. Any other conversations or any other documents I receive, I'll feed it into Legal AI. I already fed quite a few cost proposals in there, so it knows how I like it, and I got it to draft a few cost proposals. So that's what I tested it on because I needed to do that in a relatively short time frame compared to compared to a traditional law firm. And safe and happy to say that it did a really good job. And at that point, I was sold. There was 30 days were fantastic. The support was great in the sense that I had those coaching calls with yourself and the team, and that was really handy to begin with. The user interface for AI Legal Assistant is really straightforward. I'm a reasonably tech savvy person, but the fact that it was so easy to navigate and work out where things were makes life a lot easier for, say, people who are not as tech savvy as me. I think I signed up to AI Legal Assistant in July, and that was my first month or second month in practice. So as at Sperling Legal. So at that point in time, I only had a couple of matters. So it was all about testing workflows, making sure that, you know, things will continue to work and as efficiently as as they are when I'm at full capacity, as opposed to what I was then. So the first 30 days were all about just exploring and pushing the boundaries of AI Legal Assistant, trying to work out what it can do and what it can't do, and then trying to put guardrails and safety procedures, essentially standard operating procedures in place on how to use it. Because the plan is for my firm to scale up and take employees eventually, and I want to give them access to everything I have. When I was at my previous firm, and it was a global firm. We had to create a chronology. We had a graduate, we had a paralegal, and we had a couple of legal secretaries going through, I think, about 500 or 600 emails and putting that in chronologically, manually. And that took about 2 weeks. I had to undertake a similar exercise in the last month or so. And this time it was just me, and I fed it through Legal AI or AI Legal Assistant, and I got the chronology within minutes. So it took me about 30 minutes to settle that chronology because I still had to go through and make sure the information was accurate. Comparatively speaking, 30 minutes to, say, a couple of days, the time savings are enormous. I look at Legal AI as in terms of the quality work it produces, it's on par with about 4 to 5 PQE lawyer. It can produce that work. If the prompts are correct and the context is provided, it can produce that. But in the real world, when a lawyer gets to 4 or 5 years, they've already started to specialize. So they don't necessarily have expertise across all the different areas of law. They only have expertise across, say, wills and estates, or criminal law, or family law, or commercial litigation, or property. So they're starting to specialize. So whereas with AI Legal Assistant, I found that I could ask it questions which in other areas of law, and it could provide me a starting point, and in fact, something better than a starting point. It could point me in the right direction, and I could pull that thread and get the information I wanted. I think the training was fantastic. I think it's a necessity because, as I mean, even someone like myself, who's I consider myself reasonably tech savvy, I still had questions. So I still wanted to know how other practitioners were using it as well. So coming to the training in that first 30 days was a great benefit to me. I certainly enjoyed listening to other practitioners' queries, and a lot of time they have the same queries that I have. So they'd probably face the same issues that I had, and they'd resolved it. So it was good to hear that. So yeah, absolutely. I would absolutely recommend it.